tonight is a request from Simona Pete. You know who that is, Jeff?
I think we've met.
Okay, good. She wants to meet with the commission to support having a blue spotted salamander as a state amphibian.
Oh, do I need to recuse myself? I think we were discussing this.
Not for the discussion.
I would just abstain from the vote.
Yeah. Hi, Simona.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
Can she give her little spiel now?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Hi, my name is Simona P. and I'm in 3rd grade at Woodward. I really love salamanders because since I was little, I've been helping my family look for salamanders to help them cross the road to lay their eggs so they won't get hit by cars. At the end of last school year, me and my mom looked up if we had a state amphibian, and we found out we don't. I'd really like if a salamander was the state amphibian because some salamanders are endangered and threatened, and state animals get a lot of attention and care, so it would be a lot better for salamanders. I think the blue-spotted salamander would be a great candidate for the state amphibian because it's state threatened, is pretty. It would make a good symbol for Massachusetts, and no other state has the blue-spotted salamander for its state amphibian. We've been working with Representative Dykema, and we have gotten a letter of support from the Vernal Pool Association. Also, we're trying to get kids involved, like my Cub Scout pack. Last month, we found out that some high school kids in Andover coincidentally were trying to make the same species the same amphibian. The representative introduced a bill to make the blue-spotted salamander the official state amphibian of Massachusetts. H.4189 is co-sponsored by 10 representatives and has moved to the Joint Committee on State Administration and Regulatory Oversight. A bill was also recently introduced in the Senate. I'm asking you to vote to send a letter supporting this bill. Also, can you ask MACC to support the bill and tell their members about the bill? Thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this.
Thank you, Simona. Very impressive presentation.
Yeah,
Nice job.
thank you.
So any questions or comments from commission members with respect to this this awesome presentation and idea?
It was a great presentation and a fantastic idea. And I think we ought to send a letter of support and also indicate our support to MACC and see if they can't drum up some additional support. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you so much, Simona. I actually learned a lot from your presentation, which is really cool to learn about salamanders, and I totally support what you're suggesting. Well done.
Thank you.
Lucas Environmental, Matt, I have a question for you. Your mouth movement, nothing came out.
Here.
Oh, okay, great. I know that you represent both Southborough and Hopkinton, you know, through Lucas Environmental's consulting. Do you think this is something that we could get Hopkinton to jump on board with as well? Maybe get a letter from them? As a
Yeah,
neighboring town?
I can't think of any reason why they wouldn't. Yeah, I would encourage Simona maybe to reach out to the agent in Hopkinton, and maybe she could do a similar presentation for the Hopkinton board.
Maybe Melissa, you could help facilitate that,
Yes, absolutely.
because that could be helpful as well, since we kind of share the Sudbury River and some neighboring wetlands and things.
Thank
Good.
you.
Okay, so I heard Ben put a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Watson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pete, you're gonna abstain. I'm sorry, I made them vote for you. Dyer,
Yes.
Pasamato.
Yes. And good luck on your endeavors here, Simona.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'll get that letter out first thing.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks a bunch. Thanks for your time.
Okay, moving on the agenda. Next up is approval of the minutes. We have 8:26 and 9:16. We tabled 8:26 because we didn't have a quorum last meeting that had, members of the commission that were present at that meeting for approval of the minutes. So, do we hear of any edits or modifications to the minutes of 8:26? Given who's here, do we have I was not at that meeting, so I cannot vote on these minutes.
One minor, sorry, just one on A26, page 6. One little, I think it's a word left out. The paragraph that starts out Ken Robbins, and the second to last line in that little paragraph, it says apologized for the confusion and is solely being, I think the word done is missing. Minor.
Yep. And yes, we do have a quorum, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments or edits? Okay, hearing none, do I hear a motion to accept the minutes of 8:26 as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Watson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Dyer,
Yes.
Pasamato.
Abstain. Okay, next we have the minutes of 9:16. Are there any modifications, edits?
Ooh, you have a quorum for that.
Yeah, I think we might need to table these.
Oh, correct, we do not, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But if anyone saw any edits, please feel free to send them our way.
Just a small one.
Mhm.
In the discussion of the dump, there was just a sentence that maybe could be, it was a little awkward. The bullet under the Conservation Commission asked questions and made comments. In the first sentence, there's like a bunch of little clauses and it's a little unclear, and maybe they could be separated a little bit. It just reads a little strangely to me. Maybe other people it's fine, but I think the gist of it is we're trying to make sure that the money could be refunded if we get it later funded at town meeting. And then the question is clearly answered in the next sentence, but the first one reads strangely.
Okay. I'll try and look at it a little bit more.
All right, given we don't have a quorum present tonight to be able to vote on that, we'll table that till the next meeting. All right, so next up is the notice of intent, 142 Boston Road, DCR property by intersection of Central Street and Route 30. Map 58, Lot 2A, installation of fencing around MWRA riser shaft. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a public hearing on Thursday, October 7, 2021 at 7 p.m. via virtual Zoom meeting. The Commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located 142 Boston Road, Map 58, Lot 2A, for the applicant Southborough Trails Committee. The project description is installation of fencing.
So we have the chair of the Trails Committee with us. So Kat, I guess if you want to introduce yourself.
Catherine McKee. I think many of you know me, and So I'm not familiar with the proceedings, so you'll have to kind of walk me through what you want me to do. If you need a little brief introduction to the project or next steps, I'll just wait for you to prompt.
Just give us a quick brief overview for both the commission members and any public that may be on the call.
Sure. So the Trails Committee is working with DCR and MWRA to install a fence around the Hosmer riser shaft that's located on an access road near the Fayville Dam. This access road is part of the Burrows Loop Trail as well as the Aqueduct Trail. It's been in the works for many, many years, and DCR is in the process of updating a public access plan that will give the public access to this parcel hopefully next year. It's going to be reviewed and approved by the end of this year, early spring. So we earlier this year received funding from Community Preservation to purchase to install the fence and do some signage to be able to open this up. And we have to install the fence as a requirement before we can have the public access this area. The primary purpose of the fence is to secure the riser shaft. The riser shaft is MWRA water infrastructure that they use to supply 3 million people with, well, it's a backup water. So it's water infrastructure to maintain the water that they're using to supply to 3 million people. So that's the purpose of the fence. And we are using MWRA fence specifications. So those were given to us specifically by them. And let me know what other information you might need to know.
I'm off mute now. Melissa, do you have any comments on this?
So we did get a DEP file number not too long before the meeting, and their only comment was that they wanted a plan, a kind of more of a site plan that showed the proposed work, the erosion controls, and any buffer zones and resource areas. So I did kind of put together something very quickly just using MassGIS data. This is very straightforward. It's very minimal. It's a pretty small rectangle of fencing around this riser shaft. It does have kind of a stream that kind of goes under this access road that connects to the reservoir, and that would be the closest point. I think the closest point was 14 feet. So it would be within our 20-foot, but it's a very limited scope. And their other comment was about I think wildlife passage, which I think in this case, with it being such a small project, and the town needs to install per MWRA spec, there's not much wiggle room in trying to leave a gap underneath, because it is for the protection of the equipment, but also people who will now be using this trail because it is powered.
So this is primarily for safety, correct?
Yes.
So that nobody, is messing around with the shaft, or I don't want to say falling in, but I mean, and the installation of the fence is, I'm going to presume is not very invasive. It's just, cementing posts in and things like that to be able to hold the fence infrastructure up.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Any comments from other commission members? Questions here for this?
All seems pretty straightforward. It's going to be a really great addition to the Trails network. So having a walk the Burrows Loop, it's kind of, it's a big gap.
No. I mean, I'm kind of surprised that the shaft isn't already protected, but that's another story.
Well, technically, people haven't been allowed back there. They only opened it up recently to hunting. So technically, no public is allowed, past the gate.
Sure. That's assuming nobody trespasses.
Everyone does the right thing. What?
Oh yeah. absolutely. Watch the news.
The one thing that I would mention when we craft a decision, we have in the past, for the encroachment into the 20 feet, for granting a waiver for that, we've accepted as mitigation in the past, opening up an area like this for public use, for recreation use. We've accepted that as mitigation, and maybe we ought to just have a sort of a finding of fact to that effect in the decision.
Yeah, additionally, we've always also requested a request for waiver of the 20-foot.
And we do have that.
We do have that. Okay, thank you
Yes. Mhm.
for clarity on that. Okay. Let me see, if there's no other comments from the commission, I'll open up the public. Anybody has a comment or question, please raise your hand and Melissa will let you in.
I don't see anyone. They're all here for something else, so I'm not expecting much.
Okay. I see no reason to keep this open any further, given the fact that we've got the DEP number. Unless another commission member thinks we need to for, okay. So I make a motion that we close the hearing. I'm looking for a motion to close the hearing.
So
So moved.
Okay, a second, please.
Second,
Okay, all in favor?
I didn't hear. Sorry, Judith.
Yes. Sorry, my Wi-Fi is a bit.
Melissa's frozen.
Oh.
Well,
I
no, you're
thought
not.
it was me.
I think
I
we're
was
all having some issues tonight, so it's okay.
Oh, no, not me.
we always have issues.
I had issues this afternoon. My internet went out.
Oh, God. All right. Smith,
yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Kyer,
Yes,
Pasamato.
Yes.
All right, Kat, you are all set.
Thank you. Have a great
Welcome.
night.
You too.
happy trails.
Very good, Carl. Okay, next up is notice of intent and continued stormwater management permit, 325 Turnpike Road, Ken's Foods, map 26, lot 2 and 6, construction of 62,500 square foot warehouse addition. In accordance with the provisions of Southborough Stormwater and Erosion Control Bylaw, Southborough Zoning Code, Chapter 174, Section 13.5, and the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40. The Southborough and the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw. The Southborough Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, October 7, 2021 at 7:10 p.m. via virtual Zoom meeting on the petition of Ken's Foods, Inc. for approval of a stormwater management permit and notice of intent for the construction of a 62,500 square foot addition to the existing warehouse at 325 Turnpike Road, map 26, lot 2 and 6. These hearings will be held concurrently. Okay, so my understanding is that last meeting we had asked for a number of things from the applicant here. One being that the notice of intent be filed. Another being an update on the current open permits, that we get a COC, as-built, updated survey, wetland line, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know where we stand with respect to those items.
Chairman, good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Doty.
Can hardly hear you, Scott.
Okay, yeah, how's that? If I get closer to my computer, speak a little
We
bit
might have to
louder.
climb in it.
Really? How about that?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll turn up my volume here. Give that a shot.
Anybody else have any problems hearing me?
If you're closer to it like that, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I know what else too. I've got a fan underneath this I should turn off. It's probably background noise. That's probably better right there. Perhaps I'd like to give you a progress report. We did get wetland line out there staked. Lucas and Goddard were going to be out there, and Lucas Environmental also would like to see the mean annual high water staked also to better define the riverfront area. So we have that in progress. We did get our existing conditions plan, new topographic survey completed for the project area. and that is being incorporated into the plans also. We received our peer review comments from Fuss and O'Neill on Monday, and we're in the process of addressing those comments and putting together whatever revisions come from that, and also the other comments from Lucas, and address those. If you would like, for anybody who's new in the audience, I can give a very brief, maybe a 30-second tour of on using one of the larger scale plans for anybody it's not familiar with the project. And then I'd like to address a few issues with the commission tonight, perhaps for purposes of helping with future decision. One in particular I want to discuss is stormwater volume, runoff volume. Also, I'd like to discuss pollutant loading issues, and a bit about sediment controls during construction, and then of course answer any questions that may come up tonight. If that's okay with you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, I saw a nod there.
I heard some of it. I didn't get it all. So.
I'm going to share screen just to give I presume you can see my screen here with the overall site plan. For those of you who aren't familiar, this is 325 Turnpike Road, existing warehouse. It's on the north side of Route 9. This is Route 9, east to the right and west to the left, north to the top of this photograph. The existing warehouse is this dark gray area here, and the proposed addition is a 62,500 square foot addition on the east side of the property. The access to the site is, of course, from Route 9. There's a truck depot on the west side of the site where most of the major outdoor activity happens on the property. The warehouse proper has a robotic warehouse system that's in general in the larger body of the warehouse, and the proposal is to extend that eastward as in that area that's indicated as pink. The stormwater that's captured on the roof is proposed to be put into an extended underground detention area from the existing detention area that handles some of the existing roof, and that's the area here in red. That's the extension of that underground stormwater. That underground stormwater acts as detention. Although it cannot be calculated as infiltration, there is some infiltration that occurs there when the groundwater elevations allow. Some issues, an issue has been raised regarding volume, stormwater runoff volume, and I wish to address that, if I may, with the commission. Some of you may recall, having been on the commission when we were in front of the commission a few years back, that groundwater is very high here at the site. And the addition of impervious surface on the site increases the volume of runoff, of course. Ordinarily, on an ordinary site where groundwater is at ordinary depths, one would have the opportunity to infiltrate, and through the mechanics of infiltration, reduce the volume that ultimately runs off the site. This property, however, has groundwater that's at elevations anywhere from 3 feet to 18 inches below the average grades out at this site. And as a result, we cannot calculate using standard calculations, infiltration, therefore, to demonstrate the volume reduction. Yet nonetheless, we believe that there's infiltration that does occur within these underground detention areas. And we think that's an important point to be made. So we have somewhat of a, what might be considered to be a situation here of hardship in terms of volume, in terms of mitigating volume. However, related to that, that's perhaps, and I put up a image here that we had shown to the commission during previous hearings for the prior project, if I may, if there's no objection. And a few years back, Ken's Foods eliminated approximately a half acre of impervious surface, mostly pavement, some roof area on the north side, and some associated with changing of the driveway in front of the truck depot area. I believe this is what we would have called the modification to the prior permit. The net, what there was a net decrease of approximately 23,000, about a half acre of pavement area. And when we did remove that, of course, we had not requested any credit, but we're hoping that the conservation would see that it retroactively some credit for reduction of volume can be gained from that reduction in pavement that that Ken's Foods did on its own for elimination of unnecessary pavement. It was at that time, there wasn't a thought that we would be expanding this warehouse. But nonetheless, we're hopeful that the commission would take that into consideration. One of the aspects of the town zoning bylaw about volume, runoff volume, is that the expectation is the volume is maintained or reduced unless there's an opportunity or provisions are being made to connect to the municipal or a public drainage system. And I'd like to present for consideration that, in fact, the relocated ditch, which is naturalized quite nicely over many decades, in where the brook, the perennial stream runs through. This ditch has been relocated probably a number of times over the years, but not within recent decades at all. Essentially works as the public drainage system for this general area. Of course, it has important aspects as an environmental resource and as a brook, but it's also subject to maintenance that's necessary on occasion when it is encumbered or blocked by either trees or beaver or other elements or sediment for that matter, which would then cause on occasion backups and flooding on this property and other properties that share this drainage area. So we'd like that to also be a consideration that the commission takes into account in its deliberations on this topic.
When you say consideration, you mean use that as a receiver of your stormwater?
Well, it does now. It does receive our stormwater.
No, I mean in terms of the increase.
Well, the increase would go to the same connection as the existing head wall that goes to the ditch alongside of the driveway, which connects into that system. The other aspect of that, which is interesting to note, I would think that the well, of course, this brook is tributary to this, the Sudbury the Sudbury Reservoir. And as it runs around the site, then we know it goes behind residences and down in between, and then down in through a wetland between the schools before it gets to the reservoir. And we are controlling the peak rate of runoff from the stormwater, the increase in stormwater. So we think that putting the stormwater into the ground, it's staying cool, then contributing to the brook is clean roof water that's cooled by the ground, by its detention time in the ground, is the type of water actually that the reservoir probably is seeking. I think the reservoir is likely looking for volumes of clean water, cool, clean water, to promote its purposes, to ultimately at some point in the future, maybe not, we will never see, but maybe our grandchildren might see a time when that is again possible to be used for drinking water. But we do not see a volumetric issue down gradient from the site, though we are, more importantly, we are controlling the peak rates of runoff. So that's, I don't know if there's any questions on that volume issue. I'd be happy to try to answer.
I guess I maybe have a couple of thoughts on it. When you began speaking about it, you mentioned that you believe there is a good deal of infiltration that takes place. It's just difficult to quantify, and I understand why that is, especially in a situation with high groundwater. It'll vary seasonally, and also you don't have the 2 feet of separation that the DEP is typically looking for, I think, in the best of situations.
Right.
But there is no doubt some amount of infiltration. I think yes, and also during a storm, there's going to be when the system is full, there's hydraulic head acting on what is beneath it, and that's causing some infiltration to take place. It's just very difficult to quantify. And then the idea of using the level spreader with some overland flow will additionally cause some infiltration through the grass surface that will be flowing across. So all of this is to maybe make a suggestion. This is something we've done in the past when there's a situation where we recognize maybe that there isn't going to be a significant increase in volume. It's just very difficult to put together calculations that demonstrate that. And what we've accepted in the past is a letter stamped by a civil engineer listing through the reasons, and then concluding the letter with, in my opinion, these factors for the removal of impervious from the previous project and the other things we've spoken about will mitigate any volumetric increase. Something like that.
Well, probably to the maximum extent that's practical, it will.
Yeah.
I think is probably the way to term it.
Well, just as one possible avenue, because I mean, essentially, you're going to be asking for a waiver from the volumetric requirement, and this is something, obviously we look for some sort of reason or mitigation that supports that, and that's one thing that we have accepted on a number of occasions in the past.
Well, thank you for that suggestion and that lead, and we'll. That's likely a good approach to take on this. And then, of course, can be evaluated for, you will evaluate what we submit. You sort of help segue into another issue, that level spreader. We see some value in that. It does, calculation-wise, it does increase the peak rates of runoff. Not increases from the alternative where we don't use it. And that information is in the calculations. However, it's still better than, it still improves the situation, but it's just not as good. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Mr. Smith, and anybody else on the commission. Knowing your background and expertise, you seem to indicate that might, you could see the benefit of that.
Yeah, well, certainly, it would be my preference to see, you know, a low impact design technique like that used on the site. I think here, this is a site with difficult soils and hydrology, and I think it's even more appropriate in a situation like this. So, you know, just one commissioner, but I think that's the alternative that I'd prefer to see here.
Well, that was our thought when it came up in discussions with town staff, that it was particularly the town planner. This entire dare I characterize it this way, this entire project or site or development is by default might be considered these days to be a low impact development. It's all country, except with the exception of the truck dock areas where we want to capture the pollutants in structures before it goes to the underground systems. The majority of the site drains with country drainage to swales and channels on the side of pavement areas, which have, of course, over the decades turned into wetlands. Nonetheless, they are the drainage system for the property. So we thought that when we were discussing this, we said, what could we add to it? Well, we had an opportunity with getting a portion of this roof to daylight onto the grass, be high enough to be daylighted onto the grass. And so that's what we did here. So that's what the level spreader is doing for anybody who doesn't understand that. It's releasing the storm water to the surface of the lawn area. The other going in line with that is also pollutant loading. One of I think it might have been the Fuss and O'Neill. It was the Fuss and O'Neill peer review discussing this. Getting back to talking about the overall site, we're with pollutant loads and pollutant removal. Wherever we have been able to do it, we have captured the suspended solids and any phosphorus which may be attached to those, though most of the time phosphorus is soluble, and are collecting that in the systems that are being maintained out there, the water quality structures. What we have with this particular project is roof runoff, which does not have a tendency to have, doesn't have that pollutant load. And so that'll be, just wanted to sort of foreshadow or let you know what our general response is going to be on that topic, and whether or not there was any issues with that. Is that this is generally considered to be clean stormwater, this roof runoff, and we're putting it into the ground, getting it to cooled and getting it released at a slower rate, both to the ground and to surfaces when it goes to the surface. So I don't know if there's any issues on that any of the commission members would like me to address in more detail. And I think one more topic I think is important to discuss here is Craig Lucas in the comment. I don't know if the commission had a chance to see Lucas Environmental's report, which was received today based on their site inspections yesterday. I don't know, Matt, if that's been able to then distributed, or Melissa, but one of the topics he brought up was whether or not we have in fact self-created a hardship with the expansion of the warehouse on the east side of the building. And he's suggesting to the commission that more information be provided on that. I think that it's probably understood to be somewhat practical and logical by most people looking at the property that know about development, that the west side where the truck depot is does not suitable for expansion. When you look at our I guess maybe I should share this again. I think people have an idea what the site plan is that the north side is too narrow. There's not enough room up that way for any kind of meaningful expansion, because there's a driveway, the building, the lawn area, the water tank, and then there's a driveway, and then it's wetland and residential area. The south side, we have the lawn, but a lot of that is also riverfront area, and we do have the underground facility there that's doing its job in terms of mitigation of peak rates of runoff, and as we talked about a little bit earlier, some to the maximum extent that it can at certain events, also doing some infiltration work for us to reduce the volumes. To help in that effort. But the real reason that this extension is on the east side is because of the system and that was logically built within the building for a robotic system that runs east to west, delivering pallets of material west from the eastern and central parts of the building to the west part of the building where the truck depot is. And this expansion needs to follow this to be cost effective for Ken's Foods. I am by no means a logistic expert, and I apologize because I know I'm probably using some of these words wrong, but I think that you guys can follow me. Quite frankly, these days, I don't know if I'm an expert in anything. I've just been doing this for 40 years. But that the materials are run east to west, and the logical and cost effective extension of that system goes to the east. And I think everybody could see that over the years, even all the prior owners of this property and such have always kept that area east open and maintained. I think the expectation has always been that there would be expansion on that side. So this one sort of hit us by surprise with the way the business is going, I guess, with Ken's. I mean, they want to stay in Southborough, that's for sure. They want to expand here. But I wanted to point out the reasons and like to find out if the commission, if they had a chance to see Chris Lucas's, if they are looking for maybe a better presentation of that than I can give myself tonight at perhaps the next hearing.
Or if I can interrupt a little bit, Scott, maybe Matt Farrell from Lucas Environmental can give us some insight as to what he's referring to there. Because I've been busy all day. I've not seen his report, so I can't comment on one word in it.
Yep, thank you. And it is about time I shut up. Thanks.
Well, I didn't mean that, but
no. I knew that. I know that, Mr. Chairman. I know that. Just
yeah, Mark, I'd be happy to speak to that. So. So basically, in the notice of intent, the sort of one of the bases for the reason, as Scott just kind of covered here, for putting the expansion on the east side was due to the existing layout of the building. And we really just raised the question because part of that building is within riverfront area. One of the standards, as we know, for riverfront area is an alternatives analysis and sort of understanding that, you haven't created your own hardship in, by either, sort of just as setting this site aside, just if you were to, build your building in such a way that the only place that leaves you to build more is in riverfront area because the way you've laid out your parking or your truck docks or whatever, then have you created sort of your own hardship? So you're saying, well, this is the only place we can do it. But, if there had been perhaps more planning, however long ago, you wouldn't be in this case. And this is admittedly an unusual case where we're talking about sort of the internal components of a facility that normally there's really no discussion of. And it may be perfectly legitimate that the explanation that's given. We just felt it was our job to raise that question for the commission's consideration as to whether they wanted maybe a little bit more meat on that bone as far as, why can't it potentially be on the south side where potentially, the impacts of riverfront area would be avoided. And so I'll leave that at that. I do have a couple of thoughts real quick that I'll just throw out there based on Scott's presentation. One with regard to his request for sort of consideration of previous pavement that was removed. That really gets back to one of our other comments about sort of a cumulative impact analysis for the site. And I think that can be both sort of positive and negative impacts that have occurred on the site, whether they were taken into consideration as formal mitigation or not. But I think that would be helpful for the commission to see, what have all the BVW impacts been, bank, riverfront area, when and how, and kind of laying that out so the commission can understand, how much of these impacts are we approaching some sort of threshold that really shouldn't be surpassed, because this is obviously all one ongoing project. And then my last comment that I'll make for now is throwing out an idea. There's a giant sea of lawn on the south side of this building that I know had irrigation installed, I believe, in the past year or so. It seems like if instead of a giant sea of lawn there, if that were a giant, say, forest of trees, that it might be sucking up a lot of water out of the ground and doing, maybe some consideration of some creative ways of doing sort of a natural way to uptake water. I can speak personally of, seeing sites that are forested, you go in and deforest them. It's amazing how much the groundwater appears. And when you've got and admittedly, it takes many years for the trees to really do a lot of this work, but having trees planted there could potentially offset some of those water issues. And if we're sort of looking at creative ways to do that, it just seems like that. I'm not sure what the purpose of the lawn is out there. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, thanks, Matt.
Yeah. Thank you, Matt.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, Bill Pizzoni.
Yes, Mr. Pizzoni, I just have one question to you.
Sure.
Yeah, your hat says no. Is that some kind of subliminal message here or something? What's going on with that?
No, I was a new grandfather a few months ago. And
congratulations. No.
One of my sons got me the hat with my grandfather name on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured you'd comment.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to add a little more color to the driving factor on why we have to come out on the east side. I mean, as you know, originally, even when I first became involved, not when Eversource or whoever it was there years and years ago, but all the bays and the docks were always on that west side. There were some in the back. Through fruition and through the years, we were requested to move all the docks to the west side, so we weren't on top of the neighborhoods or anything like that. So that's kind of precluded any further construction on that end. Scott's right in the back, right beyond the driveway. You've got a wetlands line there that you'd be intruding with, so you really don't have room there as well. Out front, again, substantial investment on the infiltration system out front, plus the groundwater levels out there. We didn't even think of coming out that far when we were building the first edition. So it pretty much just gave us the western side, the eastern side to be able to build on. And just so that you understand a little bit more, the robotic system that went in there cost over $20 million. It's laid out in a purpose to run east and west. To try to even revamp that to grab a few feet on the north side maybe would be millions of dollars. So it's a lot simpler and more cost effective, which I know you don't really like to hear. But I think by coming out on the east side, the distance we are, we're trying to create the smallest and least impact that we can. So I think the site itself and the history of the site from the development and from the abutters and the neighbors has driven us to that east side. And I just wanted to add that little bit of flavor.
Yeah, and I think, you know, with respect to an alternatives analysis that Matt refers to, that's something we always ask for. And, you know, it's just putting pen to paper and, you know, explaining why you're doing what you're doing by looking at the other alternatives that you did look at and you verbalized here tonight in some ways. And, you know, just putting that in front of us so that we can understand that all these alternatives were looked at, were considered, and, you know, this is how we're settling out.
That wasn't our original submittal, Mr. Chairman, for the notice of intent. So, but it was, that's why I was asking if you wanted additional color on that. And it looks like, and Bill, of course, has added it. So.
You know, there's also some.
I just wanted to hit it head on. I didn't want it to linger.
Scott, in the letter that you're going to be supplying them, lay it out in it as well.
Yes.
So they've got it on paper, you know, and it's certified.
Yeah, I will. I'll reiterate it and add whatever new information the team can add to it. But
the other thing, you know, I don't know if this was in the narrative or not, that to be considered here is, you know, this is a repurposed use of this building, you know, where, you know, you didn't build it from scratch, right? You know, Ken's Food has moved into this building. It used to be a coiled wire warehouse at once upon a time. So it's a different use now than it once had. So, I mean, that probably ties your hands in some ways.
Well, all right, well, we'll address those issues in our responses to the comments and revised plans.
So
the other aspect, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Chairman. I guess got one more topic. Yeah.
I was just going to ask if you think you'll be able to have all this information, you know, research tied up and submitted to us for next hearing, or is that too aggressive?
We're already in process of changing the plans, and if we're permitted to submit a week in advance of that meeting, I believe we'll be able to have everything. But I don't know if, you know, the question is, will Fuss and O'Neill be able to have looked at it, and Lucas in that time frame? So we're going to make every effort to do that. We would like to meet and discuss the progress that we've made, if it's amenable to you, at the next hearing, regardless. There's also an issue of wildflower mitigation out there, the wildflower area. And I just wanted, I don't want to take too much more of your time this evening, but I would like to discuss that for a few minutes if I could.
Before you go there, I just wanted to jump back to something that Matt brought up. I just want to make sure that it doesn't get forgotten here. I would love it if you could get back to us with some feedback from Ken's Foods regarding his idea of changing some portion of that big lawn area to something else. I was sitting here just on Google Earth and given some reasonable setbacks to the subsurface detention and to the ditch area and so forth. I measured up the area, and lo and behold, it came out at 65,000 square feet, which is the area of the addition, just by coincidence. You know, it wouldn't necessarily have to be a big intensive thing where you're trying to recreate a forest, you know, in one construction season, but some plantings and alterations to the maintenance or whatever, and allowing it to happen, I think would be some pretty convincing mitigation for both riverfront issues and volumetric concerns. So I'd love to hear what Ken's has to say about that. And I think I saw Carl nodding his head when Matt was talking about that too. I suspect he also.
I know our silence might have been deafening in response to what Matt said. Is that we have a client who loves his lawn there, as you might imagine. And though I do believe he is a proponent of good landscape design. You can see what a nice job he did adjacent to the building in front of it. He did a rather nice job, hands-on himself, the owner of Ken's Foods, and directing that. As a landscape architect, I really appreciate it. I would imagine we will bring that up with the owner and see what he says. I think there might be a creative solution. But related to that, we also have to deal with this Wildflower Meadow. And one of the thoughts was some of that would come down from the east side where we have it proposed and begin to ring in the close perimeter to the wetlands. And I wanted to get that idea in front of the commission. We don't want to go into the 20-foot. I guess we're giving that away. I mean, it is regulated area, and a quote unquote giving away, because eventually, if we did a wildflower wet mix outside of that, it would take over that whole area, including the 20-foot area. I suspect eventually. So we were considering that to get that 30,000 plus square footage that we had originally committed to with Freddie, and though she might prefer it to be upland, Wildflower Meadows, I think we're hoping that she'll help us in the direction I've just mentioned. Is there something you wanted to add to that, Bill, at all? Or you think that's sufficient? I know you're a big proponent.
Yeah, no, I mean, we'll discuss it with Ken's.
Yeah.
And it would have to be architecturally pleasing, believe me.
Yeah.
I can tell you that, but yeah, let's chat with them and see what we can come up with.
Yes, the question has been raised about the irrigation system. Every indication is it's not, it hasn't impacted the infiltration system there, but we certainly will be taking parts of it out when we put the new system in. If we put the new system in, we're certainly going to be impacting that. We'll learn a lot at that point. But those systems tend to be rather shallow. I just learned about that irrigation system myself very recently, I have to say. I was wondering why the grass was so green out there.
Well, we had, 50 inches of rain this year.
Yeah.
I don't think the irrigation system is turned on.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't need to be used that much.
Okay,
Well,
we got a full agenda. We got to move on. So
yes, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to all that.
So in terms of the next meeting, what I would prefer, honestly, is to see, some updated documents and things like that we can sink our teeth into, and not really call everybody together for a status update.
Okay.
Given Zoom meetings and things like that we were currently doing, I prefer to, if you can have the material for next meeting, great.
Yeah.
If you don't think you can get your documentation updated and to our consultants so that they have time to review it and get back to you, then you might have to wait until the following meeting. But I'll leave that up to you to arrange with Melissa.
Yeah,
we
we'll
do
work
have
that
to
out
continue
with-
this tonight to a date certain, though.
Yeah. Okay.
So I guess what I would recommend is we continue this to the next meeting, date certain. And if you're not able to have all your ducks in a row by then we continue.
Okay.
That's acceptable.
That's acceptable to us. Thank you. And I'll work with Melissa on what kind of kind of information deadlines would be helpful to Lucas and to Fuss and O'Neill. See if we can.
Okay, before we officially continue this, I'd like to see if there's any other inputs from the commission members and also the public. No? Okay. For the public, if anybody wants to make any comments or ask questions, raise your hand and Melissa will let you in.
Not seeing any hands.
Okay. Then I'll look for a motion to continue to our next meeting.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Watson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Eat,
Yes.
Guyer,
Yes.
Quasimodo.
Yes.
All right.
All right, Nano, have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night, Scott.
Thank you. I'm waiting for him to be able to say that.
Okay, yeah.
My grandsons call me Dodie. That's what they just go by my last name. That's what I am. No, I like that. No, though. That's good. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Okay, next up is continued notice of intent, Marlboro Road, roadway and pedestrian improvements. In accordance with the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Southborough Wetlands Bylaw, the Southborough Conservation Commission will conduct a continued public hearing on Thursday, October 7, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. The commission will consider a notice of intent for a project located along Marlboro Road on behalf of Southborough DPW. The project description is roadway and pedestrian improvements. I need to step away just for a minute. I'll be right back.
I guess I'll just wait until he's able to return.
Amanda, maybe in the meantime, can you just give us a quick 30-second overview of where we left off last time?
Sure. So just a brief overview, since it's been a while since we met last. This project consists of reconstructing 600 feet of Marlboro Road. It's two 11-foot travel lanes, two 2-foot wide shoulders, and the construction of a 5.5-foot wide sidewalk on the westerly side of the road. There is work proposed within the buffer zone and within the 20-foot local buffer. And we had in that buffer approximately 100 square foot increase in impervious area due to the construction of the sidewalk. We did look at other alternatives, a no-build alternative, which didn't actually address any of the drainage, roadway, or sidewalk pedestrian access concerns. We gave consideration to placing the sidewalk on the easterly side of the road, but that resulted in having the pedestrians have to cross the road more than they would, considering all of the points, well, the majority of the points of interest, and the existing sidewalk is on the westerly side of the road. So we would be creating a situation of unnecessary crossing for pedestrians in a short distance. And that would also have impacts to the stone walls along the easterly side of the road. So that option was not preferable. This option, we did our best to minimize the work within the buffer. We did minimize the width. The sidewalk 5.5 feet is exclusive. That includes the curb. 5 feet is the minimum we go to meet, DOT's healthy transportation policy. It meets all of ADA and AAB compliance. There is a small area where we had to widen it slightly, and that was to make sure that there would be nothing between the wall that is being rebuilt at the back of walk there, which is currently failing. We didn't want to have an area with like grass or brush kind of growing up in between the back of sidewalk and creating a maintenance issue. New deep sump catch basins with hoods are proposed on the westerly side of the street, where we're going from an existing edge of pavement condition to curbed. The outfall will have new stone for pipe ends. We've placed there larger than the Mass DOT minimum standard. And at the last meeting, the areas of concern that we had to get additional information for you were in regards to that outfall and whether its capacity took into account there are a couple of pipes that connected into a drop inlet across the street that is being retained. We did additional research to ascertain where those pipes are coming from and determine what flow it's adding into the system. We also updated our model to include the ditch that runs along the easterly side of Marlboro Road that goes from the 15-inch RCP flare-in section. That ditch mainly collects the roadway drainage. There are two pipes, as I mentioned, a 2-inch pipe and then a 12-inch pipe. We were able to determine that the 12-inch pipe was collecting drainage from the roof drains from the school. So we were able to approximate that area and add that into our model. And then for the 2-inch pipe, although we weren't really able to determine where it was coming from. We assumed it was running full so that we could approximate worst case scenario what it was adding to the system. And we were able to determine that the 12-inch outfall could handle this capacity and actually had 18% extra capacity above this with that added into the model. So we are, confident and comfortable with the 12-inch pipe that is proposed at the outfall. And I believe the second question that we are here to discuss related to mitigation. As many of you, I'm sure, know, there is an adjacent project that this is part of. This was bid as an an alternative to the bid, because there were concerns about whether there would be sufficient funds to build the project in its entirety. But as part of the larger project, the History Walk, there are 2 rain gardens and a pollinator garden proposed. So there will be additional improvements to the area and to the system and to the drainage in this general vicinity. If you don't mind me sharing my screen, Melissa, I know I sent you some documents.
All set. Thank you.
So I probably should have brought this up while I was chatting. I apologize. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so this is the area in question. This is the outfall. This was the drainage structure that had the 2 additional pipes coming into it. One of the 2 rain gardens is located here just beyond kind of the limit of that 600 feet of work. So this is the first of the 2 rain gardens. This is that same rain garden here. As part of the larger plan, there's another rain garden here, and there's also a pollinator garden that's proposed along this side of the History Walk. We did provide, this is a landscaping plan provided by our landscape architect that kind of lists all the different plantings that are proposed. This is the area of the rain garden, and this is the area of the pollinator garden. As you can see, there is a pretty extensive planting list. We just wanted to present to you this information and open it to you if you have any additional questions or if we've adequately addressed your concerns in this area.
Does anybody have any questions, comments?
Yeah.
Carl.
I have a question. The history garden, is that what you call it?
The History Walk. It was a
History Walk.
Yes.
You're talking about using some of the benefits of that for the proposed sidewalk to justify that. Now that History Walk, where is that in relation to the wetlands that are involved? I'm trying to quickly.
So this rain garden here is this rain garden here, and these are the wetlands.
Oh, okay, all right. So that would be constructed under this permit, right? The rain garden.
This will be constructed as part of the overall History Walk permit project, but the permit was related more specifically to the work in this area. It was broken out simply because there was concerns that there would not be enough money to construct this segment of the work. But when bids came in, it was determined that the town did have sufficient funds to construct all of the project, including the limits here. So that's why it was kind of, I don't want to say segmented because that wasn't the intent, but why it was kind of broken at this limit, because there was a chance that the town would not be able to build it all at once. So now that they have the funds, they can build it all at once. This is going to all be constructed as one project once, and if it receives the permit for this work.
The History Walk, will that require any wetlands permit?
No work is proposed in that in the wetlands over there. There are no wetlands over there or jurisdictional areas.
Oh, okay. All right.
So Carl, just as a reminder, because it's been a couple meetings since we've discussed this, after Matt's first review, when we talked about mitigation for the 20-foot, we kind of went back and forth if there was plantings that could be done directly in that area, but because of the stone wall and kind of the limited space, it was more of a maintenance issue. So it was kind of the commission's comments of, well, think of the bigger picture and what's in the area, if you can kind of accumulate that. So we kind of asked for the planting plan for the history walk to kind of show that as the mitigation aspect. So while this won't be necessarily part of our jurisdiction, it can definitely be claimed, as your mitigation for the 20-foot from all the native plantings.
It will be built. The only concern is we
Yes,
approve this.
yes, it is.
sidewalk
It
gets
is.
built, and then the other part never happens.
No, that project is happening regardless of whether this happens. That is being built. It has been put out to bid. It is going to be constructed.
Okay, fine. Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
No problem.
Melissa, you mentioned that there was native plantings. I opened the planting plan, which has a lot of things, which is maybe for the whole site. I think there are definitely a lot of natives there, but some not natives. Is it the case that everything in the rain garden is native, or what's the?
I personally can't speak to that. I am not a landscape architect. I'm a civil engineer, and I would have to reach out to our landscape architect to ask which plants specifically on this list are natives and are in the rain garden. The rain garden area is over here, so I could kind of tell you what ones are being planted in that general area. These letters here correspond up to this chart, so they've been kind of shorthand. So there's going to be some Sweet Joe pieweed. CA is summer sweet shrubs. There will also be bee balm.
Those all sound good.
Okay.
We have to look at the detail plan.
Yeah, I apologize. It's not my forte.
Jeff, are you talking about the arborvitaes?
Yep.
Yeah.
I
see them at the top of the plan as we're looking at it, the top right-hand side, that clump of 3 trees. They're labeled TO.
Okay, we're up there.
Yeah, they're labeled TO. And then in the drawing, they're on the right-hand side at the top, above the circle area. Yeah, right there. Yep.
So that is not in the rain garden. The rain garden is over in this area. This area over here is a pollinator garden. And there's actually a downed tree that will be remaining kind of incorporated into the landscaping. So that's what this object is here.
Again, it is a little surprising that with such care and attention to detail with the native plantings, to see these 3 arborvitaes sticking out kind of like a sore thumb. I'm just surprised to see it. It's outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. Nonetheless, I'm just a little surprised to see it. That's all.
I honestly can't speak to the design of the landscape architect. I'm sorry.
They're evergreens. Yeah.
I know a lot of the time they try to vary height and color to add interest, but beyond that, it's all an art form to me that I don't understand.
Through the chair?
Yeah.
So is that TO, is that Thuja occidentalist? I
It's
can't see it.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's TO.
That actually is a native plant.
Emerald green
Oh, it
arborvitae.
is.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's likely where it's got the Smargard thing after it. It's it's some sort of a cultivar, but Thuja occidentalis is native to North America.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? Any from the public? If there is, please raise your hand and Melissa will let you in.
No hands.
No hands? So I missed the very beginning when I stepped away. Is there anything outstanding that I might have missed? Or are we all buttoned up?
we're all buttoned up unless anyone has some other questions or comments. We just kind of did a review while you were gone.
Okay. Well, then, I think we can close the hearing. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Watson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Guyer,
Yes.
Passamato.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you.
Okay, certainly. Okay, so next up is request for certificate of compliance, 139 Deerfoot Road, DEP 290-1015. I think that's being continued.
Correct.
Also, we have a request for certificate of compliance on 1 Weatherby Lane, DEP 290-1014. That's also being continued.
Yes. Mark, if you'd be open to it, I'd suggest moving down to number 5, 81 Breakneck. I see they are here in the participants.
Okay, sure. We'll jump up. All right, so that's 81 Breakneck Hill Road, DEP 290-1062.
Yes. We have Hamid Hatami here, who is the builder.
Good evening.
Evening.
Maybe, Matt, do you want to go over the review first and of course have comments?
Sure. Generally, the site was in pretty good shape. Basically, one area that we observed where there was some real erosion near the underground propane tank. There was some sediment that had accumulated along the silt fence there. And we just recommended that area probably needs some additional attention. I think, Melissa, had you said this was a bit of an ongoing issue in this area, or did I make that up?
Yes, and Hamid actually sent me a picture from yesterday of the area that I will bring up too, just so everyone kind of can see it, what it looks like now after the rain we had this week. So this is kind of going down towards that pit area. You know, the slope's a little steep. So, you know, they had just some kind of ongoing that they were kind of on top of that. I think they regraded a couple of times. So it was definitely a problem spot, but it's definitely with the grass growing in a little bit more has started to solidify a little bit better than it had been. Grass has definitely grown in a lot in the last 2 weeks. So that's great.
Yeah, I think the only other real comment we had was the trench along the driveway ended potentially a little bit earlier than was shown on the plan. May or may not be significant, but that was just another item that we had noted out there. That was about it.
So is the site primarily stable except for what we're seeing here in the picture?
Yes.
Yes.
And where does this erosion eventually end up? Does it stay on property or?
Yes, it definitely stays on the property. It mostly goes because it's a very low spot where that pit essentially is. So it's a nice water catcher naturally as it is. You know, so it definitely can't escape past that pit because it's already that shallow depression. So in terms of erosion, nothing is reaching a resource area. And I would say it looks better this week than it did even a week ago. So it's definitely getting better versus worse. I think Hamid has done a great job keeping on top of it as much as possible with these rains we've been having.
Right. So does anybody feel a need to hold back the certificate of compliance at this point, or go ahead and issue it? Okay. Do I hear a motion to issue the certificate of compliance for 81 Breakneck Hill Road?
So moved.
Here a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Watson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Guyer,
Yes.
Passamato.
Yes.
All right, Hamid, I'll get this over to you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Have a good night.
Do we want to jump to 84 Main Street?
Yes, that makes sense.
Okay.
Let me just bring Peter in.
I missed the meeting where this was initially discussed, so I'll need somebody like Ben or somebody to take the lead on this, because I'm not up to speed.
Good evening. Peter Beam is here. Sorry, I don't have a chair. We have guests, and I'm in the space that I have with my computer. I'm looming over the laptop, so I apologize if I look like I'm looming over you. So we prepared a September 30th letter outlining 6 items that were asked for discussion. The first item was work left to complete, and I outlined those items. There's been success with the wildflower seeding. However, there are some areas that do require reseeding, and we were going to overseed the entire area because we had started that in the late spring, and typically it's a fall application that we were looking for. So we thought we would just go back and reapply over that area. So I did provide you with pictures to kind of document those separate areas that did require reseeding. And then the other thing I had talked to John about was he has these beautiful antique granite posts that were at his site in Marlboro. And I had suggested possibly we could bring those in because it would really just mark the edge of where the wildflower and the lawn areas go. And it just would be just a nice treatment to have there to mark that. So if the commission doesn't like the idea of it, we won't do it. But we did identify on the as-built plan where those would be located. So I'll leave that for further discussion when we close out. Stormwater collection, the rain garden's not completed at the cottage, but at a later juncture, I did identify that we would complete that by October 22nd. I still think we'll hit that target date without any problem. Anticipate the work will actually be going forward next week after the holiday. We did suggest that we wanted to erect an antique trellis near the cottage. It was 12 by 15. Those materials were on site. We'd still like to do that and complete that. There's evergreen plantings at the HVAC units at the carriage house that have to be completed. That's really more for a screening to the Parkville neighbor. And that's something that John had committed to them. And that's the next one. Yeah, the carriage house is at the other end of the site. So that there's some plantings that have to go next to those the HVAC units. And I showed you a picture of what those HVAC units look like currently with no vegetation around them. There's still the area to complete right behind the main house. That's the patio and pool, but I did take pictures of what's there. So the masonry around that area, and then the structure that's there for the addition that was put on to the main house. There are some invasives that have popped up where we removed the geotextile material, the woven material. So there still has to be some work towards that. They have been cutting them back and trying not to use any pesticides, and no pesticides have been applied at all yet. It's all been done just manually and stressing the plant out. And we've had pretty good success with that. There's not that many of them, but there are still a few heads that are coming through. And then the last item to complete was the cobblestone edging that has to occur throughout the property, and most of that's in. There's just a few areas, and again, I tried to take some general pictures. Most of those are outside of the buffer zone, other than what's around the cottage. I did provide you with an interim as-built. There was two versions of it. One was the actual field work that gave you all of the detail, and then I took a big brother image for you so you could see what Google Earth saw, and you could match that up, and it's pretty interesting how close you can see where the old riprap limits were and where the wildflower is. It kind of just shows you how accurate that stuff could be versus a ground survey. But that gave you a color view as well as a static view of what's there. And again, the wildflower, we're going to oversee it as I described to you when we started. The drainage work at the cottage, again, October 22nd. And then there was the discussion about the native, hybrid, and non-native plantings that have occurred throughout the property. There's definitely a mixed bag of what's out here. Some of the stuff dating back to the original construction of the property. But I think as a collective, there's a good complement of each, and they do that. They complement each other. And then we've got the natives right up along the edge of the aqueduct. So I'm hopeful that everyone will see that as what it is it's trying to keep the historic integrity of the original property, the way the Burnetts have put it together, and the way Mr. Pascoli is trying to put it together now. So we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Just regarding the last point, I was the one who brought it up at the last meeting where we discussed it. We have a condition in the order of conditions that says no non-native plantings within the buffer zone. So this is an issue. It would simply preclude a certificate of completion. It doesn't comply with the order of conditions. I understand the reasons why it doesn't comply that you've given, and I think Mr. Pascoli has given in the past. I certainly understand it, but I guess the point remains in my mind that it just doesn't comply with the order of conditions that we issued. I don't know how other members of the commission feel about it.
I'm not trying to seek the certificate this evening. So this was just an update. So I hate to have to debate that this evening, but if you want to, I'm prepared to. Thank you.
Ben, since you're leading, I'm a bit confused. On the agenda, it says 84 Main Street violation discussion.
So I will admit it's weird wording. It was our requirements for the 1-year extension, that we were considering being past violations. So it's more of an update on current status and past violations.
Okay, so we don't have a burning violation problem at the moment.
No,
right. This in place. Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
That's totally my bad. I'm thinking of the wording. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And you were kind enough to give us the extension without conditioning it on this. You would just ask that we provide these 6 items at the last meeting, or maybe not the last meeting. I think it was probably a couple meetings ago. But you gave us a deadline to complete it by, and that's what we're fulfilling this evening. I would expect in 2022 at some point we'll come in for our request for certificate. I wouldn't expect to have to extend this again, and then I'll try to be better prepared for Ben's comment. And I don't know how much better I'll be at it then, Ben, but I'm going to give it my damn.
Understood.
Thank you.
Might be sitting down.
I'll be sitting down then. Thank you.
Maybe you better be sitting down.
Yeah, maybe I better be. Thank you. I think there's supposed to be some walk there, so I'd encourage you to anyone who wants to participate in that. I understand this is on the historic walk, so it'd be nice to have folks get out there to see what's going on.
Yeah, good.
All right. Any further discussion?
Yeah, so I'm curious if anyone else on the commission is shares the concern about the non-native plantings. Just to highlight the issue, I don't want this to be come as a surprise next year. And the fact is, if I'm the only one who's concerned about it, then it simply isn't an issue, obviously.
Ben, I support your position. I mean, if we have it as a condition, we should follow through. And if we want to change, if we want to modify it, then we will modify it, man. But we should, not just leave it open-ended and, on our own conditions. I mean, that would be terrible.
That's sort of where I consider, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a process for this, right? So it would be come in and ask for an amendment.
Right.
Whether or not you get it's a different story, but.
Understood. And I thought it would be advisable to try, and I suggested to Melissa, is that we could just kind of inventory and see where we have a delta. We gave you an as-built to show you the limits of things, but I didn't identify what was in there. And we'll get a better sense of that. That's why I described it as being native, hybrid, and non-native. That's what's here. There are a number of hybrids. Sometimes they're clones of what they were before. And then, some of these natives just don't afford the color that they were looking for color contrast. And I'll just try to document all of them. And then when we're ready for that, we'll deal with it. Thank you.
Okay.
Mark, there has been a hand coming up in the attendees. It's just named resident, if you'd like me to allow them to speak.
Who is it?
It just says resident.
Yeah, if they're raising their hand, go ahead.
Okay. You should be able to unmute if you want to identify yourself.
John Deli Priscoli.
Oh, hi, John. Resident.
How are you? So let's get into it a little bit with the natives versus the non-natives. First of all, native to what? I mean, the roses and all that were already well underway before the order of conditions was granted. When I was working under the original.
Mr. Piscoli, and I'll do respect. I don't think we're prepared to debate this tonight.
Well,
because I don't think we have an inventory of what's there, as Mr. Beavis pointed out, and he was going to take this back and provide us with inventory data that we can digest.
Well, I think it's important for the board to know that when the deal was made with the town and the conservation restriction that the town invested in, part of that agreement that was drafted by this town itself and your lawyers and selectmen had all kinds of language to preserve all the monumentals and everything else. You realize they're all European trees. So that was all those are actually deed protected. So I think there's a lot of conflicts there. The wildflowers that you asked me to put in were made from the Northampton place that I was directed to use, and they've come in quite nicely. I don't know if Melissa, if you got a chance to go out there or not, but it's a beautiful wildflower meadow, and those are Massachusetts native wildflowers. So those are out there, and they look good. As far as the gardens and everything, those gardens have been established for years. So I don't know where you're headed with this, Ben. I hope we can work together and like Mr. Passamato said, but I've worked very hard on this property. And everybody in this town has given me accolades. And I think it's a far cry from what the town was looking at 6 years ago in fear of demolition and everything else when everybody was panicking.
Yeah, I don't think we're debating that at all. I think, we have a
part of that, Mark, Mr. Chairman, excuse me. You've known all along I'm planting the roses. All along, from the very first moment I came in to meet you with the determination of applicability. That's been in there, and those have been in there forever. I'm happy to do whatever inventory and work with you in any way possible, but I'm not changing the roses. Period. So that's
Yeah,
where we are.
yeah. So as I mentioned before, we do have a process for, amending, the order of conditions that have been issued. And one of those processes is not to ignore an order of condition. We can't do that because we would be ignoring our own, set of requirements. But, there is a process in which we can look at that requirement that we put on it and have a discussion about that.
Well, that requirement, as I recall, we had discussions. If you look at your minutes, when we had those discussions, we talked about the roses. That was a given. To try to switch it after the fact or reinterpret it, 5 years, 4 years or whatever. How old is the order? 3 years? I don't recall. A lot of the roses were there prior to that, but I'm not going to, I've put 5 years of effort into this place, uncounted amount of money and effort, and to make the property what it is, and to talk about, it's just not something that's going to sit well. And I see the comments, and the reason I raised my hand about, are you sitting down? What is that supposed to mean? I'm just curious.
I was just joking with Peter. He's got family at his house. He doesn't have a chair to sit in.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I thought that was good. I thought the way I interpret it was there was some bomb that was going to be dropped.
No, he's standing and leaning over his laptop because he doesn't have a chair to sit in.
I'm glad that's what it is.
I was tongue in cheek, Mr. Pasquale. I was tongue in cheek.
I would encourage the board, which I don't know if the board has ever done it, to accompany me or some members of the board, perhaps, on a walk so you could see the effort that's been put into this place and see what's involved.
John, when we do the certificate, we could ask for that. Let's move it forward. But the most important takeaway tonight was the granite markers, because honestly, I saw them and I think it would be important and a very attractive.
Well, they're not on the order of conditions, Peter.
I know. That's why I want to get the commissions to either say that's a good idea or not a good idea. So, the wildflower area, it's just it's a mowing effort. So by putting the markers in, it will give someone a monument to see. I had suggested it early on when we were doing this to have some sort of separation between the two.
Well, I mow the lawn, and I make sure that nobody touches the water flowers since I'm the one driving the mower. So, and I've worked hard on it. I've put an awful lot of passion into this project. I just hope the board keeps that in mind.
Yeah, I don't think anyone has ever disputed that. Where I've come from is where I've come from all along, right from, when we first started asking you to give us the notice of intent, which was a little more than 4 years ago, we started asking for it. And simply wanted to see that the rules and regulations that are our jurisdiction are followed. And it's as simple as that. We have an outstanding order that when it comes time for a certificate of completion, we're going to go through it like a checklist. And if we're able to put a check next to every condition, then we issue the certificate of completion. Otherwise, we don't. And we didn't want to surprise you. We wanted to point out there were a couple of areas where we saw some conflicts with the order, and we wanted to highlight those specifically so that it wasn't a surprise. And our chair has gone through and described the process. If you want to amend the order, there's a process to go through, and that's what would have to happen. For the project to comply with the order of conditions. The commission would have to vote to issue that amendment.
I'm not changing the gardens, Ben.
We're not there yet. Okay, we're talking.
I'm there.
Okay,
right?
well,
and I'm just being clear with it that if that's the road you want to take, you might as well just tell me now.
The road we want to take is
those roses, Ben, were planted. Those 90% of those roses were planted before you even issued the order of conditions.
That's correct, but they were planted.
The trees were planted by Frederick. Ben, I'm talking. I'm speaking. Can I finish my thought? The trees were planted by Frederick Law Olmsted. The ones that are European beech trees. That's what they're called. Ask Mr. Weishan about them. All right, he's an expert. That's what was planted there. Why are those so important to the town that they're deed restricted, but they don't come under something like, so-called natives. And native to what? The North Pole?
Mr. Fasoli, and this isn't going anywhere. And,
Yeah.
Well, you're right,
this
it
is not
isn't,
something
Mark.
to debate tonight. There's a process for this.
Well, there's a big debate.
No,
There's a
please,
big
I'm talking
debate.
now. I am talking now. Okay, I have the floor. There's a process for this. And I would respect that you would adhere to the process and use it, and you will probably get beyond this, and we can stop this debate. This debate is not healthy at this point at all.
Well,
I'd like to
Melissa-
move on.
You haven't spent 5 years making the property what it is, Mr. Palmisano. I have.
And it's Pasamato, and I think the property is beautiful. I drive by it all the time. I think it is remarkable, and I commend you for the work you did and have done on it. And I don't think that this discussion that we're having tonight is at all healthy for either of us. And I think that what's been pointed out is that when it comes time to get a certificate of compliance, there might be a couple of things, or there will be a couple of things that we'll have to work through. And this is not unique to you or anybody else. We go through this all the time with properties that come in when, as they were building, they ran into some issue with something and they made a change or modification. And we get down to the road of the certificate of compliance, and we end up sitting down across the table and working through it. And if you have something now as a heads up, which Mr. Smith provided you, there's an opportunity to get ahead of it. And I think he was just putting that out there to give you that opportunity to get ahead of it. And getting ahead of it doesn't mean go rip up all your gardens and make a mess. I mean, that isn't necessarily what it is. So it's, having a discussion about it. And Mr. Bemis, your engineer consultant, has said he's going to go out there, he's going to inventory things, what's planted where and so forth. And I think that would be a healthy thing for the commission to understand, in my opinion. If any other members disagree with me, go ahead.
Don't disagree with anyone, but Melissa, would it be possible to dig up the minutes from when the
Yeah, I can upload all the minutes from the hearing.
for those of us who weren't there, don't remember the details?
Yes.
Sounds like there's some discrepancy if there was stuff already there when that was issued and maybe not acknowledged. So it'd be nice to read those minutes.
Sure, I'll upload them.
Yeah, we have other agenda items tonight. I think we've bottomed out on this one at this point.
I don't disagree. Does anyone feel strongly about those antique markers? I think they would be a great complement to what's there, and it would be something that would have probably been, present had they had such a separation of land uses back when Burnett, first developed this along that property. But now we do have a change in use, so I'm just suggesting it would be a nice thing to do. Only 6 of them.
It would also benefit, Mr. Chairman, if the property ever did change hands someday, that would define your corridor there, if as kind of a wildlife corridor. But that's totally up to you. It's more work for me and more effort, but I thought it would look nice, and I thought it would give you kind of a demarcation that would be very simple to identify with future commissions and future, whatever. But I thought that was a nice token to protect the Wildflower Meadow. We've come quite a ways on that slope and everything, So I thought that might be, and Peter came up with it. And we do have, some antique granite that's native to the, it's antique granite. It's not new, it looks, what it is. So it'd look appropriate there, but that's totally your call, folks.
When you say antique granite, is it stone pieces like you might see around the wayside inn kind of thing?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. That's exactly where they're stored. I own a farm next to the wayside inn. That's where they all are. Funny you should mention that, but they're in it's granite that I've collected from, that I've taken from jobs and things over the years, and I've inventoried it, and they're nice posts. They're similar to, if you look at the fence that's along the chapel there, those granite posts that you see there with, they have the wood rails in between them, but the roses are trained on them now. If you look along there, those granite posts would be similar to those. to give you this a scale of them, But it would be nice to identify that. It would be a nice feature, that way the meadow looks so good. I mean, it came out even better than I thought it would.
Yeah,
So
it does
I'm
look
really
very
happy.
nice.
I'm really, really happy with the meadow. I'm really happy. You got so many flowers in there. My wife loves it. We love it. It was a great suggestion. Whoever came up with it, I commend the commission, for suggesting those. And that was a nice work together project on that, So. this
Yeah,
was a way to
I personally don't have any objections with the granite markers. As a matter of fact, I think that's it'd be beneficial.
Peter's computer just died. That's why I gave the thumbs up, because he sent me a quick text that it was about to die. So that's why he's gone all of a sudden. But if you guys are good with the markers, then I'll definitely relay, JDP's here, but I'll relay that to him as well.
And it sounds like we'll be looking at some sort of amendment in the future, and I think that would be a good place to memorialize that.
So Ben, so I understand, you would want me to put him in now in this construction season, or no?
I would defer to the rest of the commission on that. And if everyone is fine with that, I prefer to see it then memorialized in the amendment request that will, it sounds like will be forthcoming. That's the right way to do it.
I don't have a problem with them putting it in this construction season, but also then memorializing it in an amendment before the for the COC down the road.
Oh, I see. So in other words, you put him in, but make mention that, but come in with whatever the revisions are.
Yeah. This would be one. The roses is another. Whatever else. Your list of any variables that you have that are different from the the set of conditions that you have in place now. Because as I said before, when they get into building things and doing things move a little bit here or there, and we quite frequently have as-built that don't exactly reflect the plan and the order condition that we issued, and we have to resolve that.
Well, if you remember, during the order of conditions, Ben was very helpful and actually helped guide me quite a bit on a lot of the items and the drainage and things. And I took all that to heart, and I tried to follow it, Ben, as best I could. And I'm really, I've made sure that there's no siltation there, and I'm very fussy about any type of everything. I mean, I'm keeping it tidy and tight and it's, I want it to be, look at the work I did on the corner there just to clean up what used to be McDonald's bags and beer cans. That's what was in there. It was, so I've tried to, follow through on everything and do everything as best as possible with what I have to work with.
Yep, and John, I've worked hard to try to help out to keep you in compliance with the subject matter of our jurisdiction, and I'm going to continue doing that, and that's what I'm doing here tonight. So, I think we've got a path forward.
Well, thank you, and I'm sorry. Please don't take the comments negatively, but you just realize there's a lot of passion there. That's all.
Understood.
Yep, understood.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Okay, Melissa. What's next?
We can go back to 30 presidential for that COC.
Okay.
We are not issuing tonight, but I wanted to give the commission an update because I think in part of Matt's review letter, there was some discussion about when they went out, the site was pretty much active. So the history of this is that they had nicely stabilized backyard, but when they went to remove the hay bales and silt fence, straw bales and silt fence, in some portions it had been graded a little bit more heavily up against the erosion controls. So when those were removed and we had one of the very heavy rainstorms the next day, basically the slope started to erode. So what they started to do, and just give me a second and I'll bring some of these pictures up that the homeowner sent me now that my screen is blank, is they started creating a stone wall along the portion that had the most erosion, which was technically closest to the pond. But if you'll remember from the beginning, in the permitting, originally the pond, the yard just kind of went straight into a gentle slope kind of down into the pond. So now there's going to be a rock wall right here. So this is the gates that go to the pond. So the homeowner just sent me these today. So it looks like they did put some mulch in around the little patio they have here. But now there's a break in the wall and a step, which leads right to the pond here. And you can kind of see this is over here is the gate. And so they've created this kind of mason wall throughout the property. There is a corner that is over here that is within the 20-foot. So they did kind of do some additional disturbance, but all of this was already maintained lawn within the project limits. They didn't do anything extra. They still kept with their original erosion control line. They just tried to combat the erosion as fast as they could. I think the homeowner had been away. So, kind of talking with the contractor over the phone, they started to do some things and then it got a little bit bigger than expected. But, in my opinion, when I was out there, kind of when they had half constructed it almost up to here. So the portion within the 20-foot was already built, it did provide a very nice physical barrier so that one, it's a little bit harder to drag stuff over to the pond now. They do kayak in it and such. And it also helps, I think, anything that would wash off from the lawn area. It provides a little bit more of a backstop. But I wanted to get the commission's thoughts and kind of update you that, there is this kind of wall now. It does disappear into the grade as it gets closer in the other way. So it meets the existing grade eventually. And they are going to be putting, it sounds like, just sod down. They're not kind of maneuvering their way around this. He's pretty confident it will be done next week. He wants this done as much as I think we would, so they're definitely not letting it just sit. They're active working every day and getting it stabilized as they go.
Through the chair.
Yes, Matt.
So in looking at this, and this is what Melissa's reporting is kind of news to me, so I haven't seen this before. I guess in light of the last discussion with 84 Main, I guess I'm wondering if this homeowner should make some sort of submission to amend their permit in some way to memorialize this. I guess sort of we're treating everybody the same way. This sort of seems somewhat similar.
An administrative amendment, I think, would take care of it. It's not a huge burdensome process, but I think you're right, Matt.
Yeah, and he was supposed to be here. He apologizes. He had a work call at 8. So I'm assuming it's still going on. Otherwise, he would have been here. And that was kind of my discussion with him earlier this week that, we'd want an updated as-built and such so that the commission could get their opinion and update those conditions as well. So he's not trying to circumvent the project. He does apologize for not being able to be here. Since we have a meeting, I at least wanted to share the pictures and get your initial thoughts. But that is definitely doable, and I think they are amenable to that process.
Okay.
Mostly want to make sure you guys didn't have any initial concerns kind of with that stone wall. It is pretty well put together, and like I said, when I was out there, it was a good barrier. I think it is a slight improvement, maybe not with as much mulch, maybe having pulled some of that back, but the rock itself was a nice stop.
Okay.
All right. So I will let him know on that one.
All right. And then we have 243 Parkville Road.
Yeah. Matt, will you go over? I think there was just some very minor comments that you made for 243 Parker, Bill.
Yeah. Yeah, there were two minor areas where it looked like there could be some erosion, down gradient of a roof downspout, where we thought, maybe some stone or something to dissipate energy might be of value. Sort of a potential area, nothing currently. And then there was an area of somewhat bare soil along the north side of the house. It's fairly level. Again, no erosion currently, but some additional seeding might be warranted in that area. And the erosion controls still need to be removed from the site. The requirement for removal of existing yard waste looked like that had all been completed, so that was good. And then very minor, it looked like they had to put a trampoline in that may or may not be within the 20-foot buffer zone, but it's all within lawn areas. So yeah, that was about it. So I think, potentially, I don't know that necessarily needs to hold up the certificate of compliance, but maybe just a letter alerting the folks to those couple of areas so they can make sure it doesn't turn into anything significant.
And they are removing the erosion controls in the next week or so, I believe. So that is on their list. They just want to make sure the commission was okay before they removed them. They're a little buried, so it'll be a little bit of a pull.
Okay. Carl?
No, I'm fine.
Oh, okay. So does the commission feel okay issuing a certificate of compliance for this one?
Yeah.
Okay. So your motion?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Oh, sorry. Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Watson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Heat,
Yes.
Dyer,
Yes.
Pasamato.
Yes. All right, now we have 1 Lynbrook Road.
Yes, so we did get that written narrative, a couple sentences kind of regarding the specific seat mix and kind of timeline as the commission approves. So I think at this point, maybe it might just be prudent to come up with an agreement, sort of like we did for 11 Blackthorn, for those who are on the board, in terms of that isolated area and the filling, kind of outlining the timeline, specifications of the seed mix, agreeing to that it's the New England wildlife mix. And then if the commission wants to kind of set the specific timelines and deadlines, since they didn't kind of give themselves any, I think it's within your kind of right to do that because it's been going for so long. I think at this point, just issuing them, their work order, I guess, might be the most efficient and effective way of doing it.
And completing it in this growing season, which is almost over.
Yeah.
I guess the good news is the next couple of weeks, we're not supposed to get a frost, so. Discussion?
There's specific deadlines, specific action items, besides removal of the piles and just general restoration.
You already have this drafted?
I don't have it drafted yet. I apologize. That was on my list, but I didn't get to it this week. So we can, if you guys have some specific deadlines that you want to give me, then I can get it done in between the next meeting. And that way we give them as much time as possible. Or if you wanted to hold off till the 28th, it gives them a little less time, but I think that's just kind of pushing the can down the road again, but.
I think we wait another 3 weeks is going to be, too late in the year.
Mhm.
I think we need to, tell him that, we received, his narrative and, the commission, just gonna throw some words out there. We have discussion about it, accepts the narrative, the wild seed mix. You need to remove the stockpiles of stuff. You need need to get the area restored and wild seed mix down and planted prior to date, whatever. You know, the 28th, the 31st, or whatever we think is appropriate. I don't think giving a date in November is appropriate. I think it's too far. What do others think?
I agree.
Yeah.
Do you want to have it for the 28th, at 12 p.m. and that way we have a meeting that night? And if, things aren't done, then we can take faster kind of corrective action.
Yeah, sure.
It's,
That gives them 3 weeks.
Yep.
It's not super heavy lifting.
Mm-mm. Okay.
Do we need to take a vote?
If you'd like.
why not?
Why not?
Yeah, I guess we just want to authorize Melissa to go ahead, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So all in favor of having Melissa go ahead, authoring this letter and providing this timeline together to give to the violation owners of One Lynbrook Road.
So moved.
Second.
Watson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Pete.
Yes.
Geyer.
Yes.
Passamano.
Yes. Okay. S&P bylaw regulation updates and discussion. I really wanted Sherry for this. And we don't have Russ here tonight either.
Yeah, he apparently he showed up in person and then said, "Do you need me?" And I said, "We have quorum." He's like, "All right, well, call if anything good comes up."
Can I throw another one under the pile though? I honestly thought we had taken care of this several years ago, but I guess not. But reading through the F&O's review letter of Turnpike Road, our regs require that all plans reference the NGVD 1929 vertical datum, and we should be asking that they reference the NAVD 1988 vertical datum.
I'll make that very technical change.
You know what? Boy, when you get it wrong, it's just they're different in Southborough by 0.71 feet, and it's a easy mistake to make, and it can just cause no end of headache. So, just in the interest of consistency, it's what everybody else uses these days. We should be on the same page.
Okay. Let's see. Conservation scientist agent report.
There's really not anything. I notified DEP about the dump, and I didn't get any response yet from the section chief. So I'll probably reach back out next week to see if they have any comments. And if they don't, maybe we'll just have TRC start making a work plan in hopes that we can start incorporating their comments as we go. In terms of the MVP grant that I got, we kind of busted out with mapping companies for that impervious data layer. So I am waiting for one quote that did several other towns for the same plan. He'll get that to me next week. So most likely that'll probably be our vendor if that's the only one we got. But other than that, everything else is pretty much status quo. I think the only real new construction that has started is the Barleys have started a couple weeks ago now, but on Iabella, they have 2 house lots off Mount Vickery that they've started on. But other than that, things are kind of slow. A lot of projects are winding down. We've had a lot of septics because of house sales, but a lot of the larger projects are kind of coming to the end in terms of Stonebrook and Canes and things of those nature. So kind of just working on getting stormwater permits the yearly maintenance reports and COCs that haven't never been closed out, doing some more outreach on those to those who either didn't submit their requests or, had questions, etc. So that's kind of where we are in the office. I think we have a couple projects in the pipeline coming up. So I'm sure next meeting we'll have a couple new applications, but nothing too crazy.
Yeah, I think given, all the rainfall that we've had, this whole summer, that we've done pretty well in Southborough.
Yeah.
We really
Not
have.
having, breaches and wetland impacts and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It could have been a huge mess.
Yeah, I do commend a lot of the contractors keeping on top of their erosion controls, or 81 Breakneck is one example where, the builder has been great communication wise. And within 24 hours, even if it's a weekend, he's rectified the issues. So, glad to see that project done. Middle Road, that one closest to the wetland, I think once that silt fence comes out, I'll have a little bit of concerns with that sloping over there that I initially reached out to them before the last meeting. So try and get some updates on that. But yeah, we really didn't have any major events. So I think that's a summer well done for a lot of the sites out there.
It's because the contractors know you're watching, Melissa.
I threaten them. It's great. No, we have a good, I think, team out there working, in terms of contractors right now. A lot of good communication going, so it's very useful.
Good. It's good to hear. All right. We have a couple of order conditions to work through.
Yes. The first one I have up on my screen is for Marlboro Road. So really what I focused on was the mitigation aspect for the history walk. And I discussed the amount of impervious that will be within the 20-foot buffer zone and the temporary disturbance, and how, well, maybe I didn't get it in there yet. And then just adding, mitigation or temporary work within the 25 is being offset from the mitigation on the history walk and the native plant installations. So that would be the only, and then everything else was our standard conditions.
Right. So you need to add that as number 3 here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, right there.
Mitigation, history walk. So I obviously will put that into better language.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right. Any discussion on this? No. All right. Do I hear a motion to issue the order of conditions as written and will be amended?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Watson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Guyer,
Yes.
Pasamato.
Yes.
All right, and then it comes up, hopefully. This is the, I'm sorry, my computer is freezing tonight, guys. This is the trails. There's not really much to put here, but I did put about the mitigation, about the trails opening up, and therefore a permanent structure is allowed in the 20-foot. And did discuss comments from DEP in terms of the fencing has to be installed per MWR specifications. So wildlife passage in such a small area kind of wasn't a concern of the commission.
Okay. Any further discussion? No? Okay. Do I hear a motion to issue this order of conditions as written?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Watson,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Guyer,
Yes.
Pasamato.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Any other topics for this evening?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Nope.
there's a question for you, Melissa. The Chestnut Hill Farm management plan.
Yes.
I'm just gonna not to be snarky or anything, they've been putting a lot of effort in. I see them doing some work around the farm and also with, applications to the selectmen and so forth. I feel like we may have been pushed off the table or something, and just the attention really isn't being paid. We're closing in on the end of the year now, and it was due last year. I understand with the pandemic and everything that's slowed things down, but I seem to be seeing them putting a lot of effort in, and I think some of that needs to go towards this management plan.
Yeah, that was what I was also just going to bring up too. So like you said, I believe I talked with Mark Purple this morning. The selectmen did deny their alcohol licenses for their farm days, that they, instead of one big day, they spread it out over a couple of Thursdays, I think. And so, town council, from my understanding, seems to be of the opinion of, they could have this, if they make the kind of case that it is educational, this could be kind of that ad hoc add onto it, having alcohol, wine and beer. But I think it's pretty clear that if we don't have an updated management plan, that's the real place where we can hash out some of these details. And I'm kind of, I guess, surprised as well. I thought I was going to at least be getting a couple sections to review in the last couple weeks. But I don't know. I agree, Ben, if maybe this kind of got put off a little bit. They were focusing on trying to get those one-day alcohol licenses. So I'm going to follow up with DA again next week and kind of put emphasis on, we're coming up the end of the year. And if it's not done by the end of the year, you're in real non-compliance. I know, we sat down, or I sat down with them during the summer and discussed kind of the first line of defense in terms of what the commission previously discussed of what they wanted to update in the management plan. So we had a good basis, I thought, of what they were going to kind of update and discuss. So I'm hoping, maybe with a little bit more pushing on our end, that we'll get that, at least have a section or two for the next meeting. But I know there are other boards and committees that would like or are supposed to comment on it as well. So it's a process, and we're running out of time. So we're definitely on it, and I'll kind of make it a little bit more forceful if the commission is kind of leaning that way of, get it in sooner rather than later, and to have an actual update at our next meeting on the 28th.
Just to say, just one last quick thing. The existing management plan does have a continuity clause in it, so that if they're late submitting a new one, the old one does stay in effect. So it's not like there's nothing there, just so folks know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to have interrupted.
I'm just on anything when there's a requirement that somebody does something on a certain amount of time. Does anybody know off the top of the head what if they don't do that? What recourse do we have?
They're in violation of the CR technically.
Yeah, but what does that mean?
Yeah. There's a arbitration clause in the CR. We'd have to go to arbitration and have an administrative judge order them to produce the document. Or I think we'd need to ask town council, honestly.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't get there.
No, but it's always interesting for them to know and for us to know why it needs to be done.
Yeah, I think, Melissa's kind of thought that they've been very focused on other things is probably the explanation, but given all of the conversations we had with them last year about we want to collaborate with you, we want to be supportive, they need to walk the talk here. Everyone has got a lot of stuff going on because they're catching up from last year, whether it's professional, personal, whatever, but they either have to come to the table with a really good explanation of why they haven't done it, or they have to do it, in my view. And we shouldn't be, they're a big enough organization to be able to have people work on this. If they have to go outside to a, external consultant to do it, they've got the funds to do it. Sorry, I feel quite strongly about this, as you can tell.
Yeah, it's clear they just been not paying attention to it and just putting it off. know,
Yeah, I know.
I don't want to use the word ignoring it, but it feels that way.
Yeah, I know they have put, effort into it, especially during the summer when we were having those meetings. So, I definitely want to give them credit for that. But since that kind of initial thought process, I haven't really seen much. The commission, it sounds like, is agreeable, then I will kind of give them a more firm deadline that you guys would like a more substantial something to look at or discuss on the 28th or by the 28th, whether it's with them or not. I think that isn't necessary one way or the other at this point, but at least getting a feel for where they are and what their thoughts are on the management plan would be a much further start than we have now.
Agreed.
I think that's really it from me then.
Okay.
Unless anyone else has anything they want or need for the next meeting. And I think our next meeting, I haven't seen any policy changes on the Board of Selectmen. So unfortunately, I think our next meeting will probably still be virtual. I know some of us like the in-person, but I think for now, logistically, with the amount of hearings that we'll probably have, virtual is going to be the way to go.
Well, I'll continue to be virtual because my 8 months is up in 2 weeks for my vaccine. So I need to get a booster.
Are you a Pfizer?
I am.
Ah, okay.
I just got the phone call today, the message today that the state is now offering the boosters.
Yeah, I got one too.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I gotta get queued up. Yeah. So they're saying booster shot and then what, 2 weeks? You wait 2 weeks?
And then 2 weeks after the booster, you're back at full strength, I believe.
Yeah, okay.
Don't get shot, Mark.
Huh?
Get shot.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't believe that I'm already that far out.
Yeah.
Went by fast. So, okay, if nothing more, I
Ben.
think we will hear a motion to close the hearing.
Oh, so moved.
Do I hear a second?
I'm sorry, with Judith, were you trying to, I thought Judith was trying to raise her hand earlier to.
Oh, sorry. You're muted.
I think we're all a little glitchy tonight.
Yeah, okay.
Now she's froze.
Our Wi-Fi sucks at the moment. Sorry, what were you saying about the state?
I thought, well, I'm sorry, I thought you were trying to raise your hand earlier. You had one more issue you wanted to bring up.
Oh, well, it's kind of related to it. I was just going to ask about, are we remote or in person? Because I will be remote. I'm in Arizona, so.
Yep, we are remote on the 28th.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, so I'll second the motion. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay. All in favor?
Watson.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
Heat.
Yes.
Dyer.
Yes.
Pasamato.
Yes.
All right. Have a wonderful holiday weekend, everyone.
You too.
Oh, it was a holiday this weekend?
Columbus Day is on Monday.
Yeah.
Native Peoples Day, isn't it?
That's
now?
right. They changed the name.
And Heritage Day.
Just my little editorial. I think that's the world's worst